Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Devongunsmith Diaries. What we're looking at today is a 687 silver Pigeon in 20 bore. It's full strip down service. So you get to see it completely taken apart. So let's get into it, guys. If you enjoy the content, don't forget, like, subscribe and click the notification bell. Right, so first things first. Okay, so I've got some gloves on. That just gives me a bit more purchase for my little lily white hands. You're going to see now that I can use my thumb to now turn. And there it is in one go. Easily done. Just needed a bit of protection for my soft lily white hands there. Now, retained screw there. Now, that's dry. I'm greatly in favour of a liberal coating of grease on the inside of this channel here. There's a little hole there that allows it to squeeze out, and that then lubricates that track as well. So that's one of them, and it should be easier to demonstrate the second one now. And get the angle of the dangle right. There we go. So now I'm going to go in an anti-clockwise rotation. That's interesting. There's some sign of wear there. I'll have to look into that. Push it in and then it pops out again. And then once again, we seem to have a little bit of dryness here because that should just pop straight out. Anyway. Okay, now we're too far low. Zoom out. The same again, guys. Again, I'm going to use the cloth to grip the barrel with my other hand. Now, at this point, sometimes you can't see where it is because the grease fouls it up. There you go. And that's nice. It's moving freely in there. It's locked up nicely. Take off the excess. Do not fear the grease. Okay, for now, we're going to put the barrels aside. I personally don't spend hours cleaning somebody's barrels in a full service. Because when I clean them, they're clean. And it takes sometimes a full hour to clean them, scouring them properly with a torpedo and various jags. So, if you come to me with a full service expecting the barrels to be cleaned, especially well, other than push some tissue paper through, make sure they're not fouled, and then oil them, like most people. But if you've got a nice gun, you should at least know how to clean it. Right, one of the common areas is on the fore end. So to the strip down of the action. As is quite often the case, this gun's already been adjusted. Again, dry. That's my first thoughts on this. Rather dry looking. It is a full strip down. So, these are Gunsmith made spring compressors for the mainsprings. Just to make things easier, I'm going to raise it on the block again as before. So, these are obviously adjustable wrenches that have been modified to have the characteristics that we need to remove a spring. And there it goes. First one is dry. They're dry, that's what I'm... So, excuse my arm. There you go. No, they're a bit stiff and a bit dry. Let's just check the lengths. There's nothing in the lengths. Somebody's had a bit of a wallop on that. Not sure who's been doing that. So I have to be wary of previous work that's been done by another, because that might come to bite me later on. Not that I'm suspicious, you understand. Okay, so to get into the lock, you need to drop out the trigger group, and easiest way to do that is to use a fine screwdriver, take out the lock screw, which sometimes they fail because somebody else has had a little go and giving it a bit of a mangle. And this one's the one that you find on your hands and knees after hours of looking for it. I need to find a magnetic dish. These you can get at Tool Fix or whatever they're called. Or Screw Station, I don't know. Anyway, that's just a magnetic steel dish. It's found in the automotive areas and most of these mail order type places you go into. Right, so this is a specially ground down screw, and that's got to go into my lap. Oh, there you go, so I can crack it because it's always tight. Now it's okay. Feels a little gritty, a bit concerning, feels a bit dry. There's a bit of dirt there, that's also one of the reasons for that. While I'm not worried about this, I'm going to take it off in a second. Right, quickest way, Oh, sorry, that's my head butting the camera because it's on the table. I am not. Okay, so there's a pin there. It seems to want to go that way, and it does. Sometimes you can just draw them straight out. Find something like a toothpick or something, you can easily push that out. It's not easy to show on camera, but I am nonetheless going to pop that out. So get behind the spring and just push out the bar like so. Ha! He said smoothly. Right, it's just there, it's just straining. There it is. Right, into the pot, and then you can just gently slide that out. These all feel very dry. Look, there's no grease of any kind on my hands. That's a slight worry. Now that releases the screw there. It's got some marks on it, so there's evidence of somebody having gone in there and done a bit of work, but a bit concerning that there's all this burring. So I don't know if I can do this without doing it in my lap. Nope. So I got more control sitting in my lap because I can just get the pressure down that bit more. And as you can see, bit of rust there, guys. It's not very wet at all. It's, well, you can visibly see the rust there. That's not great. So yeah, it needed a service. Something was going on here. All very dry. I don't like it. I'm a bit suspicious of this, to be honest. So there's the trigger group. We'll work on that in a minute. So into the action. Oh, there's a bit of grease. First bit of grease I've seen. That must have been in there. Well, I don't know when. See, there's these little plungers here that set the cocking dogs rolling, and then they're pushed on these. If I can try and catch that first. That cocking dog on the fore end moves that when you close it, and the resultant force on the back is to operate that cam there, and that obviously pushes underneath here and cocks back the hammer. So that's what you're looking for. These are moving rather well, but since it's a full strip service, it's all got to come out, because that's what the customer's relying on me for. So in the absence of a fine screwdriver, because I'm a typical gunsmith, I've always got a toothpick in my wallet, weirdly, I know. But what it does do, you can use a toothpick to push these out. And later on, you can use the same toothpick to act as slave pins. Right, so it all flies out, and that is typical. Just what it is. It's what it is. It's a strip down. Right, so in the orientation, that's how they came out. There's only 2 of those plungers and 2 of those springs. One of the springs is still stuck in there, which means there might be some rust following that. Got it? Okay, now at this point, things can become handed. So I would suggest, if you look at it like that, you lay them out so in such a way, if you should be doing these things. Should you be doing these things? That's the question. Okay, so now you can see the machining marks quite clearly. inside there. And it's got a little bit of roughness there. I believe they leave those in there to trap grease, to stop it sealing up, to allow it to seal with grease. So that's looking pretty good. Here's your two strikers. They're relatively easy to remove as well. On the Beretta, there's one roll pin that serves them all. That holds both top and bottom firing pins in. Now, that can be a bit tricky because it's a roll pin. Yeah, it's not going to do it. It's not going to push out on that. Not going to push out readily. Now, on the top lever spring, which is in here, you see, there's the top lever spring. I've left that in. I don't need to move that. That's not really essential. Fingernail, flat of your fingernail to push that back in. One screw there that retains that. That roll pin, that's going to be a bit of fun. Let's see what that does. Right, everything's magnetically attached. There's a certain amount of movement on these, as you can see, due to the way that they roll around. But you see the benefits. I haven't cleaned any of these parts, you will notice. The magnet's grabbing everything. Right. So now, as you can see, everything's safe. Well worth, they're not much money. Certainly save you a fortune in looking for parts on the floor when they go peeing or roll off the bench. Trust me. Ask me how I know that. Right, better get some punches. Right, so top lever, the detente, and the auto safety all work off the same point, and I'll demonstrate that. When you close the gun, the breech closes on that. That then releases the top lever, which is, as you can see, is over to the left slightly, which means the spring's not worn. The lock bolt shoots forward and retains the action, retains the breech in the action, should I say. Right, so there is a funny thing with these, and I nearly always forget, every time I think. There's a retaining pin there that holds part of the detente for the lock. And if you don't release that first, you can't get the firing pins out, because that's an annoyance and frankly a bad design, bad Beretta, because then gunsmiths can't slip the pins out in the frame without taking a full strip down. Bad Beretta. So this is where things go sometimes a bit wrong. So toothpick at the ready to ensure that you can get through there. If I can, there, that's the top one popped out. See how I retain it with a pin? As we're doing a full strip down, I'm not overly worried, but it all goes ping at this point. There's a little spring there underneath. Got to find it again. It's all covered in dirt at the moment. There he is. Bit doidy. There should be a little piston on the end of it. Right, I'm trying not to. Somebody's used a roll pin. I don't think they're supposed to use a roll pin there. Just not sure. Not sure. But that spring I've got to be aware of. It's not free yet. So, oh yeah, they do tend to Loctite that. Sorry, I got to lean on the bench a bit. Nope, not having it. Greasy hands. Not helping. Yeah, that's quite often Loctited, as in a way it should be, but I need to release all of this now. See, there's no detente working because it's right there on the bench. That little spring is being a bit awkward, and I need to clean that because it's all pretty rusty in there. Let's just see if I can shock it out. There you go, nearly shocked it out. Could you see it peeking out there? There it goes, plop. All rusty, so good job we got in here. Right, retraining springs being a pain. Not helped by the fact that the camera's where I need to put my face. That's the trouble with trying to do these point of view videos. And it's all black and dark in there, you can't see anything. Right, well, magnet. There it is. And again, rusty. So, it wasn't a minute too soon that we got into this action, was it, really? Yeah, we'll get back to that top lever, I think. I'm going to just get that roll pin to be released. First, you've got to feel your way in gently sometimes, so to speak. And shouldn't need anything too heavy for this. It should just pop out. Ooh, banging my head on the camera again. There you go. And top pin and spring. Right, I'm not going to take that out anymore because they're a pain to put back in again. There's a little tip. Right, I can see down in the tunnels, they look clean, but I'm going to give them a little wash out. It's actually in pretty good shape. Let's get this top off. I'll probably have to Loctite it back on. Or thread lock it, should I say. Sorry, not Loctite. It's a thread lock. Right, I'm probably doing this on my knees because I need to... Right, that's that. I just need that purchase where I can clamp against my knees and press down. Okay, so here we go. I generally put my hands over everything in case there's a springs ready to pop out or anything, because they sometimes do. I forget where they are. So there's the cam there. Got to be careful of these cams because as soon as you release all this, this can try to drop out. One washer. Okay. So there's the under tension spring there. Okay. And it's probably likely we need to remove this slide because it will need a little bit of movement to... Oh. Everything has been a bit of a fight on this gun, and yet it's been previously accessed. So I would hasten that, like, it's almost like somebody's used a ultrasonic bath without using a hot oil bath afterwards. That's what I think has happened. There seems to be watermarks on just about everything. So if I was to do a quick service and it was a budget job, I would put this in a hot water bath in an ultrasonic. All of this crud would be lifted out. It would bubble out of the centre. It would all come out of all the orifices and places. It would just cloud up the water. But then you've got to soak in wet action. So I would use proprietary oil in a hot container, hot oil, above 100 Celsius, and put it in the bath and raise the temperature above 100 Celsius. which would then chase out all the water and penetrate it fully. Unfortunately, there are some vapours given off by that, so you have to be aware of that. So this should ease out now. I think I might need a copper or brass. Again, you cover your fingers to surround it. It should just pop out. It's been a while since I did one. Yeah, it's coming. It's under tension at present. That's one of the problems you have. So put the threaded screw back in, but not fully in. Give yourself some purchase to strike through the cam. And it's retained because I've got the screw there, obviously. So that's top lever and screw. Right, I missed a step. A misstep happens occasionally. In order to remove the cam and the top lever, in order to clean the release pin, this one here, clean this channel here, you need to remove the lock slide, the top lever, the cam, the top lever, spring, and in order to do that, you've got to put back the little detente. And it's easier to do it without the firing pin in place, obviously. What you generally do is you slide that pin in to almost home. See, it comes out here. And these grubby little objects I haven't cleaned yet, you pop back in. But I ought to clean them, because otherwise I'll never get them out again. But I'm going to go for it. I'm just going to go for it. All right, so that goes into that little slot there. Once again. Let me see if I can't rest this against that to make it easier for viewing purposes. That might work. It might work, you never know. Don't hold your breath. So you've got to reintroduce that little cam to align with that second hole, not the first hole. Which is, let's just say, for the sake of arguments, it's fun. Ideally, you want that retracted so that the one, but I need this in to make it hold back. It's a chicken before the egg scenario. Right, so that wants to be retracted and placed in place all at once, while aligning the pin and stopping the whole thing from flying out once again. Something like that. I don't know whether I can get that in there. Yes, I can. Right. Okay. Because that probably, I think that's been wailed on a few times in the past. It's got a rounded edge. It's proving, I'm going to have to grind that into place. So the trusty toothpick comes into its own. Okay, so in that case, does that release? Well, yes, it does, kind of. It's a bit flexible, isn't it, there? It's not the perfect fit. I don't imagine I get to do that many times before it fails on me. I have to confess, it's been a bit of a while since I've done one of these. And I forget more than I retain these days. I'm not going to lie. So my hand covering all those parts and the brass drive. There we go. Out it pops and there comes the spring. There's no retention on that now, so that could all come out. I'm very tempted to leave that in because it's such a pain, but I can't. That comes out there. There's, using the trusty toothpick, you can push out the pin there. Make sure there's no retaining spring. We want to remove that little blighter because that needs to come out for cleaning as well. Ooh. You may remember, sharp tap works, and then just pry that spring out there. Can you see that? Oh, that's the piston. Ah. Do you have one of those days you just feel weary and you think, oh, I'm tired? I'm having one of those days. There you go. There's the spring coming out. Okay, lovely. So this is all grot bags at the moment. So this is probably going to need to all go in the... Yeah, I think it will. It'll have to go into the ultrasonic. It's all a bit grotty. Or I could clean it in some... Oh yeah, some acetone will do the trick too. If all else fails, just look for all the bits. Isn't it? Right. Strikers and springs. Cocking dogs. Or cocking rods, some people call them. This is not that dirty to warrant ultrasonic, so I think I'll give it a solvent clean. And some of you guys, right, you see that little blighter there? Just a tip. Get it back into the mother screw because you will never find that damn thing again. And a lot of the suppliers aren't offering them anymore. Don't know what happened there. Oh, that's a bit cross-threaded, isn't it? Oh, that's a good start. There you go. Right. Acetone or brake cleaner. Assuming that not everybody has such things as ultrasonic cleaners. A contact cleaner or brake cleaner will really thoroughly clean that crud out, and just check that there's no rust in there. No, just oil. That's good. So where that dirt was coming from before, see, it is quite dirty in there, so it's fine. It's only grease though. It's not rust, that's for sure, which is very, very pleasing. Yeah, so assuming that you don't have, you know, tools like ultrasonic baths and things like that, you wouldn't necessarily have. I'm approaching that kind of approach with this cleaning process. Right, so the solvent I'm using is a contact cleaner from my local auto shop. So it's an electrical contact cleaner, so it does, it'll vibrate, it'll, I haven't got an airline, so you've got to use your mouth. I have in my workshop, obviously. Just want to make sure I'm sucking out all that dirt. Now, using a light gun oil, just to displace anything. Just giving a little wiggle in there to make sure it's clear. There's nothing dirty floating out. And we want it to be coated in oil, not anything unpleasant. Where there is weather points, such as strikers, these lock pins, and the release catch, I would be inclined to use a moly grease. Not because it's high temperature, it just tends to withhold and prevent. There's a little bit of wear there as well. Sometimes you have to observe things and just take note. There's some marking there on the frame. Or on the upper receiver, as the Americans like to call it. Bless them. It's not an automatic weapon. It's a shotgun. So that's the action frame. That's the trigger guard. They like to call that the upper receiver and the lower receiver. Yeah, but it's not an automatic weapon, is it? So each their own, I guess. That's armourer talk for weapons. This isn't a weapon, it's a shotgun. Right, there's loads of oil in there now, which is gratifying. Give this a little wipe because we're going to be putting clean components back in there in a second. So that is a fully stripped action frame. Now this is where it's going to get fun because it's all going to be soggy. Okay, now remembering the premise is kitchen gunsmithing. So using tools that are readily available. The Cottage Kitchen Gunsmith. Stainless steel sieve. All the parts. Check the sieve. Clean. Right. It's only acetone, guys. Put that in the dishwasher. Or hand wash it if you will. Nothing now apart from a bit of crud. Again, glassware will withstand a little bit of dirt. That'll wash too. Okay. Always remembering the premise of this channel is the theoretical, at least, ability for you to do it in the outback or up a mountain or anything like that, should you need to. Now you can see, and disclosing nicely, right, rust. It's the purpose of the service. And all these little springs are all making a mess and looking terrible. But they're all clean, guys. Right. Yeah, that should work. Got the parts. Ready to go. Bring in the lithium moly grease again. And a trusty cotton bud. Okay, so quickly, the first thing I need to do is just push through some moly grease through all the channels that I'm going to be working on. That just protects against any dirt and whatnot. And then left and right push rods. Just test this one for size. Yeah, there we go. Nice, lovely. Same the other side. What else do we need to do? We need to put the detente in. Again, dip them with a little bit of grease that helps keep them in. So he's in there, lovely. Okay, fab. Strikers. So this is the 12 bore frame, not the 20 bore I was working on earlier. 687 again. Like buses, you don't see one for ages and then two come along at once. Funny thing happened. In the editing of the 20 bore, I had a situation where this portion was missing and there just wasn't a piece of film made for it. So I must have forgotten to start the camera or battery went or something. So as you see on the 12 bore, there's two different sizes of firing pin or striker. And it's a matter of working out which one fits and which one top and bottom. It's relatively straightforward to do. So put the top one in the longest one in the bottom, and it certainly seems to lend itself to that. Put the shorter one in the top, and absolutely not. So it must be the longer of the two. One of the springs has been retained, so I'm just going to put that back in there. Yeah, it's the top. Put that back in the spring. There we go. Okay. So to retain the lower one, we need to tap in that roll pin. To retain the upper one, we need to pop in the long pin. It should just go straight in. In fact, let me just see. A bit tricky. There you go. Knew it would. It's a bit tight. There you go. It's retained there. Now, must remember, we've got to put the detente for the top lever. We'll push that through a bit, back again. To see there, let's see. So we leave it a little bit long for the minute. And then just tap the other one in. Trying to use 3 pairs of hands to do it like you always do with these jobs. So little finger on there, tap that in. Because if you don't, you'll end up smacking the roll pin down onto the striker. Lovely. Good. Next, the tiny spring and the plunger. So that lever is to locate in there and pushes back there. And the roll pin, this is what gets in the way of the roll pin, so you have to have a roll pin there, not a normal pin, if that makes sense. I think it kind of does. Right, so I'm going to try tapping it in with this brass. Right, now we're at a snag. It's on that touch and go point. It's difficult to do this and demonstrate it on the camera. There it goes. When it goes in a rush, you know you must have it right. So that's how that catch releases. There you go. And that's in. Lovely. Good to see. Now we're going to add springs and plungers for cocking cams. And again, at this point a fair bit of grease, unapologetically. This is the corrosion inhibiting grease that we use. So here's your left and right cocking dogs. Oh, greasy as ever. Right, so the long stem points down to the push rods and the short stem engages with the push spring, and it's just a little bit greasy. Sorry guys, I'm not going to be able to show you this until it actually just happens. Ooh. See, this is why I don't like getting it all greasy, isn't it? Obviously. Right. Get it aligned. Right, these, unless they're pushed fully down home, are a pain in the butt. But then they're seriously under pressure and very inclined to fight you. And I'm making a right, that's better. I'm making a right pig's ear of this. And it's not evident to you what I'm doing. So, somewhat annoying. Anyway, that's one in. So you can see how it's assembled now. This is all fingers and thumbs, I'm afraid. So guide that back in where it belongs. Hold that in place. Stuff the long leg down like that. And hopefully, oh no, fingernails in the way, right. Trying to do it, letting you see, which is, I can't even see normally at the best of times. Right, thumb fingernail holding in place there. Give it a wiggle. You've got to cover that spring. There it is. Right, I've pushed it in. It's not very elegant when you're trying to show an assembly, because obviously you need everything where it needs to be. See, that's how it comes forward to cock. Okay. And the springs are there to make sure that they stay back where they belong. I can't remember how I did this last time, I'm not going to lie. They're a bit of a pain, let's be honest. Let's not pretend. Want a bit extra grease in that. I seem to remember I slipped this in here last time I reassembled one of these. But if we get this right, we can utilise the hold off pin there with a little bit of fertling, technical jargon. You push it down and locate it. I don't know if I can do this in one go. I recall doing it something like this before. And it's a combination of getting it more or less there. I know it was certainly easier going back in than taking it out. I remember that much for darn sure. Right. It's something like again, thumbs and stuff notwithstanding in the way. You get it somewhat like that and then just edge it forward and it just drops into that little space. And it's always a little bit of a fight when it's greasy especially. Something like, anyway. Obviously, it actually wants to sit in there. But of course, the slide gets in the way of that. So it's sort of a deft movement. But I've greased everything up now. Right, so just to reiterate, this is with the cam in place. And obviously, with no spring, because we're not fighting it, this is the easier way to show you. So that's in the locked position. And when the top lever engages on the bottom, like so, that then cams out like so, pushing on that spring and releasing the catch, the release catch. So in reverse, can't do it. My hands are too greasy. There, that's locked. This spring is always under tension. So what we've got to overcome, or I have in this case, because I don't think you'll ever want to do this for sure. You really only want to strip this part out, strictly speaking, if the cam's broken. Not going to lie. That's how a lot of gunsmiths will do it. So that's the locating. But no, we've got to actually put it in via the spring. I think I might have to pop it in the vise, so I've got a third hand for all that. See if I can set it up for you. If I can, I will. Oh, did you just see that? There you go, it's in. Okay, so that part of the job is done. I like to squirt a blob of grease in there because I couldn't do it before. And that just squeezes on there with the screw, helping it. And it pulls it in. There you go. Lovely. So it's greased well, works a treat. We know the spring's okay because that's far over there because it's pushing right on. Push it right in. If it was brand new, it'd be more over there, but you know, it works fine. Certainly not a fail anyway. So fighting the magnet again. A little bit of grease. Pop that slide in there. Okay. So obviously that pops in through there at the right time when it becomes assembled. So I've done that bit. So at present that bit's done. Now we come to part 2, which is the lock, the trigger unit or assembly, or lower receiver, as some people prefer to call it. Right, so let's get to this then. This is a pair of adjustable grips that's been allowed to change. Some people, I see them popping them out like this. I see them disappear. I'm too old for that kind of stuff, so I prefer to just use a tried and tested tool I've made. Okay, so when you fire it in whatever selection it's in, and the selector indicates which of the sears under here is released. So we brace it that way. That's that one. Place it that way. That's that one. So that's the manual, but there is another way. I'm going to hold it in place because obviously it's not in the frame. First one fires, and inertia should take over and release that one, and now that to fire. This one works fine. I've tested it. It's not an issue. For the most part, they slide out. Right, that's a pair. As you face the gun, left and right. Yeah, so these rock back and forth. And yeah, let's just pop them out, see what we get. You need a fine pin to push these out with. Wonder with my trusty, yes, there you go. Right, and immediately the spring disappears, which is supposed to be in there. Like that. Anyway, I chose to do the Berettas because of all the strip downs, because these are my least loved. Anyway, this is where loads of springs all fall out at this point. Not gonna lie, I never really particularly loved this. One of my springs shot under my armpit. There you go, left and right. Spring there. Sorry, my hands are in the view again, aren't they? Doesn't matter which one goes which, it's the same. That whole assembly comes out, but there's a bar there, a roll pin that holds these little blighters in place, these levers. There's a selector levers. Right, so it won't come out, but they do. They always come out, and you never know which way they went in. At that point, you wish you got somebody else to do it. No word of a lie. Right, so that one roll pin now is holding it all in. I don't think I've got a small enough pin anymore. Right, camera keeps flashing up low power all the time, which is annoying. But let's just see if we can pop this little thing out. I'll have to do it off camera because I need to swing the hammer. There you go. As easy or not as you like. And annoyingly, there's nothing wrong with this action at all. This trigger group. This is where it all plays up. As you can see, there's wear marks on it. Wear here. So that's where you generally see problems. This is the little blighter that would normally be failing, but clearly isn't failing. So I usually polish these up because that's where the wear is. It doesn't matter, you take a bit of the gold off. It's obviously rubbing there, otherwise it wouldn't have marks on it. Anyway. Yes, that's how you take it apart anyway. Right then, so to the reassembly. This is actually in really good shape. This was one of those situations where the customer wanted a full strip down. I said, do you really need it? It doesn't look like it needs it to me. But he was quite insistent, and that's fine. That's the customer's prerogative. Right, so starting with the little springs. Now, this is contentious. I prefer to use a pretty standard gun grease, which is called molybdenum disulfide. I use it partially to hold the little itty bitty parts together. As you see here, try. Oh yeah, I can get that. There you go. So these have a little recess hole to sit in, and just like that. And with these springs, it's easier to just use a toothpick or something like that. So what's contentious about this? Some gun makers will say only use light oil. That's fine, but you do want to keep these from falling out again. And this is where you can get unstuck. See the little hole there? You need to locate that there too. So let me just rest that down a second. The contentious issue is that some say the grease attracts dirt. It's like, well, that is true to a point. However, in South Devon, which is not a very affluent area, a gun might come in once or twice every few years. Right. Oh, sorry. You see this collapsed again. Right, so an alternative method, which I have used, is you offer them up like that. But you have got to have a bit of grease there to hold it all together. And it all gets a bit greasy, obviously. Stating the obvious there, really. But if you can see, without me knocking the camera, that then sits in... Sorry about the banging. Right, that now sits into its little recess just there. Almost perfectly. But now you have the... This is what I was going to show you. And it's done it for me. They don't always locate. You see the little hole in the bottom there? I use my pointy device. This is what I'm talking about here. I put a bit of grease in it to allow it to be a little less snaggy. You can put them in first or after. Right, that one's in. And if you look, we could use a toothpick to align this. To get it in the right spot. Keep your finger there. It's a bit of a faff, guys. That's what I'm saying. Now you've got the effect of a slave pin right there, see? Which is why anything like a small instrument screwdriver will do the same thing. It's just to allow you to offer it up. So what you can do is withdraw that to that point there. Drop its mate in, which we should have put a little bit of grease on in advance. Let's see if we can do it the hard way. The grease is not essential. Right, did you see that? I hope you did. That sits down there. Now I just withdraw that peg a little bit more. And I'm going to endeavour to push that through in one. There you go. So that gives you a resting point, and now you can see the levers flicking back and forth, trying to fall out again. So occasionally you have to just drop them back in again. Okay. So fiddly, yes, it is a bit. And then you've got to remember which one of these, and it'll be that one, goes back in that hole. So by pulling this back, this is how I would suggest anybody doing cottage gunsmithing would do it, at least. And that just pushes straight in. That's why I use liberal amounts of grease, guys. Okay, now, epic fail. So you get a situation where the spring pops back out again, no problem. What you can do, because I put that one in dry, that sort of proved my point, really. You see how easily it tries to fall apart. Now I'll get the weekend warriors that go, oh, there's a special tool for that. If you were a factory trained, all this absolute bunkum. I've worked in factories and I know that, yes, you are right, there's jigs for everything, but they're not available to the public. Not commonly anyway. You might get lucky and get hold of some, but in general, you're not going to see them. So in order to keep them in place, we are going to want to put strikers in. Now, if you observe, there's part of a bent there that locates there. So again, a little bit of a dunking, and you might groan and moan about my technique. Doing it one-handedly, remember. A blob of grease. Sorry, it's off the camera, I didn't realise. Blob of grease just to make things easier. And now that sear has got a nice liberal amount of grease on it. And it just pushes in like so. See? Sorry, didn't quite get it there. And once you've got a retainment, I'm not American. Right, so if I can show you the camera and all that, see how that just slides back there easily. Right, so I would use something to hold it in place, typically, like that. This is how I work. Now it's flipped. Yikes. That's in locked mode. Okay. So sears again, facing the rear. Sear bents. Now there's a screwdriver in the way there, so I'll ease that back a tiny bit. Right, I have to press this up against my chest because I need a chesticle support. Right. Okay. So now you see they're being held by the screwdriver. And while my fingers are all greasy, might be a bit annoying, but let's give that a little rub, little wiggle. Little wiggle. Right, we're nearly there now. But as you can see, the alignment isn't quite right. So I can show you this. You can align it like that. Give that a little wiggle. Oh, that's quite difficult. I think it's because I'm trying to do it to camera. It's never normally this difficult, I can assure you. So something like the back of a file. I'm showing how you can, right, just got to get a bit of grease off my fingers. How you can manipulate these into place quite quickly. Although I'm not doing a great job because I'm trying to keep it in the camera view. Wouldn't normally be this difficult. Right. It's just slightly off. It's always when I'm trying to record it. They normally just pop straight back in, honestly. Promise you. Right, so can you see that yet? I don't know if you can. There you go. It was there that quick. And that's why there's a film of oil and grease on all of these components now. So that's part of the sear release. Can I show you that? Yeah, I got that. Good. So there's your hammers in place. So that will now hold those springs in place. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. So this little blighter and this little screw, they are such fun. Now, the ubiquitous toothpick can be broken off and used as a slave pin. You've seen me, if you watch all my videos, I quite often make my own metal slave pins for particular jobs. That's just personal preference, but in the outback or up a mountain or in the Highlands of Scotland or something, you need to do a quick fix on your gun, just get it going. If for some reason you've had a problem, you might have been lucky enough to have a couple of these spare. I would advise getting this couple spare because they do play up from time to time. And it's always when you least want them to fail. So what you can do, going back to our pot, the pin that holds the safety in place, actually 687, you can use the safety retaining pin as a little slave. Quite a useful thing because what you're doing is you're assembling this. Okay, a little groove there to allow for the length of the spring. That's the effect you're looking to get. Okay, so trigger group, which has got a nice film of oil on, the inertia block and trigger. So I've got to get this to seat just right. And it's quite a close fit, guys. Not going to lie. It always seems to be when I'm trying to do it on camera. Right, so you can see the alignment there. Okay. Just going to pop my trusty toothpick in there. Now I can relax. So these levers have, and I have had trouble trying to get you, there you go. You can see there's a bevel and it needs to face inwards. There's a little block in here, just there. I can try this one here, which is covered in grease at the moment. And it should change over. So you can opt with the safety changeover. You can automatically select your barrels, or on inertia it will rock back and flick that over through the inertia system. And in order to transfer your trigger leverage, you have that little lever with a flat and out of focus the bevel there that then it has to sit because that rotates through an axis. So now we're going to pop that together. What fun. Okay, so I will withdraw this here sufficiently, but only just. I keep that retained with my other finger. Now, with the hammers holding the sears in place, so it's kind of cack-handed doing it via camera, but it is what it is. Right, so that sits below there. There you go. I think you get my drift. I'm trying to do it so that you can see what I'm doing rather than just be all fingers and thumbs and pointlessly prodding away at things you can't see. I've just about got that held in place there, see? And it's rotating off that. So very, very carefully. He said, there's nothing carefully about this. Right, give it a little wiggle, and I normally do one side at a time. I'm just going to very lightly tap that in place because something's jiggled and wiggled around. Oop, this is where it's going to pop out any second if we're not careful. Right, you wouldn't have seen it because I used my little, I used one of my fingers. Right, so can you see, oops, sorry, can you see here the pin popping out? I need to clear that space. Can you see that as I push it back and it's cleared? But it's holding the trigger assembly in place while I get ready to drop the second one in. Sorry about me jiggling and banging around. I'm knocking everything for 6 here. Got to get them the right way round, and they, in the heat of the moment, don't look any different. Okay. Still a little bit of the pin protrusion. Get it wrong. And you wish you hadn't. Sorry, I'm always fingers and thumbs and get me fat fingers in the way at the wrong moments. Here's I've got the camera between me, my nose, and the job. I'm sure some of you are absolutely groaning looking at this because I'm actually trying to do it for the camera, per usual. Right, did you see how easily that popped in there? Okay. So this roll pin also wants to be smacked into place at some point. All right, so if I can pretend I'm the mainspring, that lever pops there, that releases. Just check something's not working correctly. Right, so you get to this point and you think, there's something wrong here. What's going on? What's going on? Right, so what you have got to do is raise those levers up, both sides. So now you can see that the block that sits below there, which engages those levers, will swing from left to right. And that is the precise function of that roll pin. So get a wacky stick and a block, tap that back in. See if I can do it on camera, because the camera's right close up to the work to get you what you need to see. Yeah, gonna hit the camera. And obviously using a brass pin. This takes way less time when I'm not having to assemble the unit as well. So now you see that they're kept up and the selector can flick from one side to the other very easily. Okay, so you will recall that we've assembled the spring. That is where it should be, indeed. And the short portion of the spring, see there's a little slot there. That's where it needs to locate. So a bit of forward pointy pressure in there, trying to get it in your view once again. Can you see what I'm trying to get a good light position? Can you see how difficult that is? Until it isn't difficult, it just goes in. Just need to make that slide in with a little bit of pressure. Oh, there's my pointy stick there. So there it is. I think I got that on camera, guys. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. So with that final pin, I've used my toothpick and I'm holding that all together carefully so I don't lose the tension. Quickly push that through. And as you can see, the safety pin is popping its way through. So I'm going to just gently and quickly tap that in. And there, within my fingers, is retained for you guys. Right, so there you go. So this is part of the mechanism for preventing a doubling effect. And there you go, guys. So next part is to mate up your two sets. You can put the springs in if you want now. I tend to put them in out of habit at the end because it means I can maneuver things around a bit easier and so on. Right, so there's nothing there to stop that. Just gently pop that there, align the top there and the bottom, and there you have it. This is why I prefer to not put the springs in. This is just my personal preference. So now we put a securing screw there, and if you remember, we put that little blighter in, didn't we? So it didn't get lost. Whoops, sorry guys. I'm working with the camera between me and you so that we can get a good zoom. Right, so pull that out, but don't undo it. Because for now, I'm going to put a little drop of grease on that because they are notoriously dry. Alright, so with a thin screwdriver, I could just dial that in. Just pretty much ready to go. Same with the other screw. A little dab of grease always goes down well. And with a thin screwdriver, just dial that in. We're not doing them tightly at the moment, it's just to hold it all together. Okay, then find the proper screwdrivers. Right, so I have my trusty one with a ground down part to it. And this is where you take that little blighter out and hope you don't drop it on the floor. I tend to put it in my tray, my magnet tray. They're always flaming tight, always. I just got to show you something about this system. You've got a recess there for the screw, but also one there for the screw, if you see what I mean. That's generally the favoured one, but sometimes when I'm putting them back in together, they don't squeeze up immediately. So it's not always certain that they will pinch up fully to start with. I have seen them screwed in that way around. It's usually at the front. But I don't panic about it. We just do it later on. So I've got a very hairy looking screwdriver that I use for this. That's tight. Good. Okay, so the reason the springs are, for me at least, I've seen people put them in, is that the selector tends to get a bit in the way. The springs get in the way of selectors. So a little dab of oil. Most of this will get wiped off, guys. And then you set that to halfway between the two. It should pretty much drop straight in. Usually one of your safety retaining springs will get in the way. There you go. And same that side, just push them to one side, let them drop in. First thing you see is it's not engaged in the selector. So you just gently raise that up, slip it in. I don't know whether you saw that. Did you see that, guys? So now that it's engaged with the selector, while it's not working, it still selects. Okay? Now, behind this V-spring, there's a little hole, which is what you need to engage the trusty firing pin, slave pin that we've used before. I call it slave pin because that's what we were using it as. Now, sorry, if you put it fully to the back, you can see the hole right there. Okay. Sorry, bashing away at the camera, and it literally drops in. And all you've got to do in this instance is make sure that it's evenly placed over those springs. Sorry, I'm always apologising because I'm trying to get on with the job at the same time. Okay, so now safety's off. Safety is engaged. See that block holds the trigger down. Sorry about banging the camera once again. Safety off. There's space there for the trigger to come up. And that's it, guys. That's the action pretty much prepared. I've got to sort this out. I'll do that off camera. Waste of time showing you tightening a screw. Really is a bit boring. So, mainsprings. You know me, grease it up. I prefer to see these with a bit of oil or grease on them because they don't always come back in a 12-month cycle. That's just what I know to be the truth. I'm sure in the home counties or in affluent areas there will be a lot more proper servicing going on. I know even the gun makers will just use solvent based cleaner like one of these, spray all the mechanism, and that's all you get. So a little bit about inserting springs. When you're an apprentice gunsmith, you quite often get to make your own tools. Now, this is a tool you may have seen me using before. It's basically a pipe wrench, and I've dremeled different jaws in it so that it can clamp upon a coil spring and the action, such as this. But I've got various tools like this, bifurcated screwdrivers they're called. Some of them with slightly, this is the first one I grabbed, but it's intended to help you lever that spring in place. I have seen gunsmiths just push them into place, but I'm a little bit like, not sure about that. Certainly not on the Berettas. There's sufficient pressure there to, this one's not quite long enough. I don't know if I can demonstrate. Yeah, the forks on that were set for a specific job. So how I operate this, I'm going to zoom out a wee bit, I think. There you go. So I would just do it like this. Rest on there, there's a location, and drop it in. Now you see it's not quite in there. So you need to give it a little bit of a wiggle with your thumb. There it is, and it's in. Same with the other side, jostling around with greasy things. People say, well, you shouldn't grease it up so much, Paul. I just like that bit of security knowing that they are where they're supposed to be. And there you go, job done. One assembly assembled. Going to tighten that up in a jiffy. Lovely. Remember that dry fore-end screw. Whoop. Trying my hardest to screw it up here for you. That snicks in nicely too. And then cock the gun for the first time. Beautiful. So that's the essentials of a full strip down service. Different people do things differently. Not to say it's right or wrong, really. But a little bit of a clean. Remove all that excess grease now. That's part of it. Make sure that it's all nice and clean. I'll probably put a little bit of linseed or a little bit of London wax on the wood. But it's all very functional and very slick. And you can see there's a minimum of grease on the ejectors. But it does feel good. It doesn't feel so dry now. Selectors. I'll get some snap caps and I'll test that. The changeover. Everything's good. That's the strip down, guys. Thanks.